In a distant galaxy, on a beautiful and lush planet, lived Princess Arya. She was born to a royal family that had ruled for centuries. Her people were strong, proud, and known for their grace and beauty. Arya, however, was different. While others in her family were born strong and healthy, she was born with a disability that made her fragile. The disability affected her legs, making it difficult for her to walk. She needed a special chair to move around, and that was something no one had seen before in the royal family. The planet's people valued strength above all else. To them, being able to fight, move freely, and show power was the most important thing in the galaxy. Being weak was seen as a great shame. Every time Arya was seen in the palace, her disability was the only thing people noticed. While the palace halls were filled with loud celebrations and grand gatherings, Arya often stayed in her room, hidden from the eyes of those who would judge her. From a young age, Arya knew she was different. She watched her cousins and other children in her family run and play, and she wished she could join them. But when she tried, her legs would give way, and she would fall to the ground. Her family would help her up, but she could see the disappointment in their eyes. They didn't say it, but she could feel it, the feeling that she was not like the others. She wasn't strong enough to be a leader, not graceful enough to be loved, and not powerful enough to be admired. As Arya grew older, her parents, the king and queen, began to look at her differently. They knew she could never rule their people the way the world expected. They couldn't let their daughter, the future queen, be a reminder of weakness. The royal family was a symbol of power, and Arya, no matter how much they loved her, didn't fit that mold. The king had other children, strong and capable sons, but none of them were ready to take the throne. So, the royal advisors began to whisper behind closed doors. They suggested that Arya should be hidden from public view, away from the eyes of the people who would look to the future queen with disappointment. Her parents agreed, and that decision changed Arya's life forever. Arya was kept in the castle, away from the crowds and the celebrations. She wasn't allowed to participate in the royal events that everyone else took part in. It was as if she didn't exist in the eyes of the world. She spent her days reading books in the royal library or staring out the window, watching the life go on around her. Her heart ached to see people laughing and dancing while she stayed behind, alone in her room. Her mother, the queen, loved her dearly. But even she couldn't protect her from the harsh truths of their world. Arya was told time and time again that she was special. But the truth was, she was a burden.
Ow.
No one spoke of her as a future ruler or someone who could bring change. It hurt, but Arya knew it was true. In the eyes of her people, she would always be the disabled princess, someone to be pitied, not admired. One day, while Arya sat by her window, she overheard a conversation between the king and the queen. They were speaking quietly, as if they didn't want her to hear. Arya listened closely, her heart sinking with each word. "We must prepare Arya for the truth," the king said, his voice low but clear. "She will never be strong enough to lead. It's time we think about what is best for the kingdom." The queen sighed, her voice filled with sorrow. "I know, but she's our daughter. How can we tell her this?" Arya's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to run out and tell them that she was strong, that she could do anything, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she stayed in her chair, staring out the window as the world continued without her. For the next few days, Arya stayed in her room, her mind swirling with confusion and sadness. She tried to stay busy, but nothing could take away the empty feeling that grew inside her. She felt invisible, as if no one saw her for who she truly was. She wasn't the powerful, beautiful princess everyone expected. She wasn't the strong leader her people needed. She was just Arya, the girl in the chair, at night. When the castle was quiet, Arya would often sneak out of her room and sit in the royal garden. The moonlight would shine on the flowers, making them glow in the dark. She would sit in the silence, her thoughts heavy with questions. Why was she born like this? Why couldn't she be like everyone else? Why couldn't she prove her worth? But no answers came. And so she sat there, wishing for something she couldn't name. something that would change her life, something that would make her feel seen and valuable. Arya began to dream of a different life, one where she could be more than just the disabled princess. She dreamed of a world where her worth wasn't measured by her ability to walk or fight. She imagined leading her people not with strength, but with wisdom and kindness. She imagined inspiring others to see beyond their differences, to value each person for what they brought to the world. She didn't know how to make these dreams come true, but she held on to them tightly. In the deepest part of her heart, she knew she was capable of more than anyone gave her credit for. She would find a way to show the galaxy that she had something special, something no one had seen before. But for now, all she could do was wait. Wait for a time when she could prove that being different didn't make her less than anyone else. And so, she continued to sit by her window, watching the stars, hoping for a sign that her life could be more than just a quiet, lonely existence. Little did she know, the day was coming when someone would see her for who she truly was, not the disabled princess, but a woman with strength, courage, and the heart of a leader. And that person wasn't from her world. He was a human, a stranger from another galaxy, and his arrival would change everything. It had been several months since Arya last saw the sunlight. She spent her days in the quiet halls of the castle, where the only sound was the soft hum of the wind outside. Ah! She didn't mind the silence. It was familiar. But sometimes, in the stillness, she could hear the voices of the palace staff talking about her behind her back. They would gossip about her disability, her inability to lead, and her failure to live up to the expectations of her people. But, despite all this, there was one thing that kept her going: her dreams. Dreams of a future where she could be more than just a princess who needed help. Dreams of being a leader who could inspire her people with wisdom and kindness, not just power and strength. She dreamed of a world where she wasn't seen as weak, but as someone who could stand tall and lead with heart. One day, everything changed. It was a warm afternoon when the palace gates opened for a visitor. The guards, who rarely saw anyone other than royalty or important guests, stood at attention. Arya was sitting by the window in her room, watching the small details of life outside. She saw the large ship land near the palace and the busy activity around it. She had never seen a ship like that before. It wasn't from their planet. It was sleek and shining, unlike the older, bulkier ships her people used. Curiosity stirred within her. Who could it be? And why had they come? The ship's landing was followed by a procession of important officials, all rushing to meet the guest. Arya had heard the murmurs through the palace corridors about a special visitor from Earth, a planet that had long been known for its advanced technology. The human, Nathan, had been sent by his people to make peace with the galaxy's many races. The planet's leaders were eager to see what the human could offer in terms of trade and military strength. The leaders had spoken of him with mixed feelings. Some saw the humans as a potential ally, while others viewed them as a curiosity. Arya had heard little about Nathan, but there was something about him that intrigued her. She didn't know why, but she couldn't shake the feeling that their meeting would change everything. As the day went on, Arya found herself wandering through the palace gardens, a place she went to when she needed to think. The flowers bloomed brightly, and the breeze felt good against her skin. It was her only escape from the heaviness of her thoughts. It was here that she first saw him. Nathan stood by the fountain, talking to a group of advisors. He was tall and confident, with dark hair and a calm smile that seemed to put everyone at ease. His eyes were focused, and there was a kindness in them that Arya had not seen in anyone else. He wasn't looking at her, but something in his demeanor caught her attention. For a moment, she watched from a distance, hidden among the trees. Her heart raced. Why was she feeling this way? Why was she so drawn to this stranger? Maybe it was his smile, or maybe it was the fact that he was human, different from the people who had surrounded her all her life. Curiosity overcame her, and she slowly approached, moving as quietly as she could, hoping not to draw attention to herself. Didn't want to be seen, especially not by him. She was the disabled princess, after all. the one who was never supposed to be in the spotlight. But as she moved closer, she accidentally knocked over a flower pot. The loud crash startled Nathan, who turned his head in surprise. His eyes locked with hers, and for a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. Arya froze, unsure of what to do. Nathan's expression softened immediately. He stepped forward, his eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked in a voice that was calm and soothing. Arya hesitated, unsure how to respond. I'm fine," she said quietly, looking away. She didn't want to admit that she had just been staring at him, watching from a distance like some kind of stranger. Nathan smiled warmly, noticing her discomfort. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you," he said. "I'm Nathan, from Earth. I've heard a lot about your people." Arya blinked in surprise. "From Earth?" she whispered, barely believing what she was hearing. "Yes," Nathan replied. "I'm here to meet with your leaders and discuss peace, but I'd much rather be speaking with you." His voice was kind, and it made Arya feel strangely at ease. "You are the princess, right?" Arya nodded slowly, but she didn't know what to say. I had never met anyone quite like him before. His attention was different from what she was used to. It wasn't filled with pity or judgment. It felt like he truly saw her. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have bothered you," Nathan said, realizing he might have made her uncomfortable. "I didn't mean to intrude." "No, it's okay," Arya said quickly, her voice shaking. I don't usually get visitors, and I'm honored to be the first," Nathan said with a playful smile. "I promise I'm harmless." For a moment, Arya couldn't help but laugh, despite herself. Nathan's easygoing nature made her feel more at ease than she had in a long time. She realized that this conversation, this brief encounter, felt different from anything she had experienced in years. The more they spoke, the more Arya found herself drawn to him. His questions weren't the typical ones she was used to. He didn't ask her about her disability or her role as princess. Instead, he asked her about the planet, about her people's culture, about what she loved. He was curious about her as a person, not just as a royal figure. For the first time in her life, Arya felt heard. She wasn't just a princess in a chair. She was someone with thoughts, dreams, and a future. Nathan made her feel like she was worth something. His simple kindness was a gift she hadn't expected. Before Nathan left to continue his meetings with the leaders, he turned to Arya. "I'm glad we met," he said sincerely. "I'd love to talk again sometime if you'd like." Arya nodded, a small but genuine smile crossing her face. "I'd like that too." And just like that, Arya felt something shift inside her. It was a spark of hope, a tiny flame of possibility. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. Nathan had seen her, not for her disability, not for her title, but for who she truly was, as Nathan left. Arya stood by the fountain, watching him disappear into the palace. She had no idea where this strange connection would lead, but she knew. One thing for sure, her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Days passed after their first meeting, and Arya couldn't stop thinking about Nathan. The way he had looked at her, with kindness and respect, was something she hadn't experienced before. For the first time in years, she felt like someone saw her for who she truly was, not just as the disabled princess. The feeling was both comforting and confusing. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. Nathan had asked her if she would like to talk again. She had agreed, but she hadn't expected him to return so soon. But just a few days later, he came back to the gardens where she often spent. Her time? This time, he didn't seem like a guest or a stranger. He felt like a friend. "Arya," Nathan called as he walked up to her, a smile on his face. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Arya's heart fluttered at the sound of her name on his lips. She looked up from the flowers she had been tending, too, and saw him standing in the sunlight, looking as if he belonged there. For the first time, she didn't feel like a princess trapped in a golden cage. She felt like a person. She smiled back at him, glad to see him again. "No, not at all," she said, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm glad you came." Nathan sat beside her on the stone bench, his eyes taking in the beauty of the garden. "Peaceful here," he said. I didn't expect your home to be so calm. The palace seems so full of life, but here it's just quiet. Arya nodded, understanding what he meant. This is where I come when I need to think, she explained. The rest of the palace feels so loud sometimes. Everyone has their own place, their own role. But here I can just be myself. Nathan looked at her, his gaze softening. I can't imagine what it must be like to be in your position, he said. To have everyone expecting something from you that you can't give. Right. But I see something. Different in you, I see strength. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Arya looked down at her hands, unsure of what to say. Nathan's words were so different from what she was used to hearing. People always told her what she couldn't do, but Nathan didn't see her disability as a weakness. He didn't even focus on it. Saw her as a person. That made her feel more alive than anything else ever had. Thank you, she said quietly, not able to look him in the eye. No one has ever said that to me before. Nathan tilted his head slightly. I don't think anyone ever really looked at you the way I do. The words hung in the air, and Arya's heart skipped a beat. She had never been looked at like that before, not by anyone from her planet. To them, she was a disappointment, someone who could never live up to the expectations of a leader. But to Nathan, she wasn't a symbol of weakness. She was simply a person. For the next few hours, they talked. Nathan asked her about her favorite books, her dreams, and the world outside the palace. Arya shared her thoughts, revealing parts of herself she had hidden for so long. They laughed, talked about life on Earth, and discussed the wonders of the galaxy. For the first time, Arya felt like she had a friend, someone who cared about her just as she was. But deep down, Arya knew that this friendship was dangerous. Her people would never accept her spending time with a human, especially not someone like Nathan. He was an outsider, a guest who was supposed to be negotiating peace between their worlds. And she was a princess, someone they needed to protect. From anything that might bring shame to the royal family, the following days were filled with tension. Arya couldn't stop thinking about Nathan, but she knew their connection had to remain a secret. If anyone found out about their meetings, it could ruin everything. Her parents had already made it clear that she was to keep her distance from him, but it wasn't as easy as they thought. She didn't want to let go of this strange, new feeling that had awakened inside her. One evening, after another long day of royal duties, Arya slipped away to the garden again. She needed to clear her mind. She wasn't surprised when she saw Nathan waiting by the fountain, his dark figure silhouetted against the moonlight. Arya, he greeted her, his voice low but warm. Hi, she said, walking toward him, trying to keep her emotions in check. I didn't think you'd be here tonight, Nathan smiled. Had to see you again. I can't stop thinking about our conversations. Arya's heart raced. Nathan, we can't keep meeting like this. People will notice, he frowned. Walking closer to her. Why? Because I'm a human, because I'm not supposed to be here, or because you think you don't deserve a friend like me. Arya looked away, feeling the weight of his words. Because I'm a princess. Because I'm supposed to be the future queen, and I can't let anyone see me. This way, Nathan's expression softened. I see you, Arya. Not as a princess or a ruler, but as someone who deserves kindness. You are worth so much more than the crown you wear. If your people can't see that, then maybe they don't deserve you. Arya's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand, she whispered. If I break the rules, if I go against what they expect from me, they'll reject me. I'll be nothing. Nathan reached out, gently lifting her chin so she could meet his gaze. Arya, you are not nothing. You are everything. I've never met anyone like you. If you want to be more than what they've made you, I'll help. But you have to believe in yourself. The words touched her deeply. She had never heard anyone speak to her like that before. Nathan wasn't afraid of her family, their rules, or their expectations. He saw her as someone who could make her own choices, someone who could break free from the chains that had bound her for so long. I'm afraid, Arya confessed, her voice trembling. Afraid of what will happen if I fail. Afraid of losing everything. Nathan smiled, his eyes full of understanding. You won't fail, Arya, not if you trust yourself. The moment hung between them, thick with unspoken emotions. Arya felt her heart race. She didn't know what the future held. But for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Nathan was right. She could be more than they ever expected. "I'll try," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll try to believe in myself." Nathan's smile was the brightest thing she had seen in a long time. He didn't say another word, but his presence alone gave Arya the strength to take the first step toward something new, a future that was hers to shape. The days grew longer, and the palace became more tense with every passing moment. The leaders of Arya's world, the Council of Elders, had begun to notice the growing bond between the princess and Nathan. Whispers filled the halls of the castle, and every time Arya walked past the council chambers, she could feel the weight of their eyes on her. It was as if they were waiting for her to slip, waiting for her to make a mistake. But Arya was determined. She had promised Nathan that she would try, that she would believe in herself. He had given her the strength to see beyond her disability, to imagine a world where she wasn't bound by her weakness. But there were still so many obstacles in her way: her family, the people of her world, and most of all, the expectations that weighed her down like 1,000 stones. One day, the palace was buzzing with news of a grand competition. It was an ancient tradition on Arya's planet, a public display of strength and skill, where the strongest and bravest males competed for the right to be honored by the king. It was a test of endurance, combat, and agility, a chance for the young men of the kingdom to prove their worth. At first, Arya didn't think much of it. It was just another event, another opportunity for the men of her world to show their power. But as the days went by, she overheard more and more conversations about it. The council had decided that this year's competition would be different. It would be a test of leadership, a way to see who would truly be worthy of leading the people. And to everyone's surprise, Arya had been chosen to participate. Her heart sank when she first heard the news. She had never been able to compete in these kinds of tests. Her disability made it impossible for her to keep up with the other contestants, and yet her parents had agreed to it. Arya knew the decision was made for one reason only. They wanted her to fail. They wanted to prove that she wasn't fit to rule. But Arya refused to back down. This was her chance. She couldn't let the world see her as weak any longer. She had to prove that there was more to leadership than strength. That a ruler didn't have to be physically perfect to lead with honor. Nathan, of course, was there. He had been watching from the sidelines as Arya prepared for the competition, offering words of encouragement when no one else would. "You don't have to win in the traditional sense," he told her one evening. "You just have to show them that you're capable of thinking beyond their narrow view of what a leader should be." Arya had never heard anyone speak about leadership that way before. She had always been taught that power came from being physically strong, from being able to hold a sword and command an army. But Nathan was right. There had to be more to it. She had something that no one else could match: her mind. And she was determined to show the world that it was enough. The day of the competition arrived, and the entire palace was filled with excitement. Arya stood on the edge of the arena, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never been so nervous in her life. The crowd was massive, and every eye was on her. The male competitors, strong and proud, stood at the ready, waiting for the signal to begin. Arya, on the other hand, stood quietly, her hands resting in her lap. She wasn't there to fight. She wasn't there to prove her physical strength. She was there to prove that leadership came from within. The other contestants had no idea what to expect from her, and that made her feel even more determined. The first round began, and Arya watched as the competitors took their positions. They were fast, strong, and skilled. They fought with all their might, each one trying to prove that he was the strongest. Arya didn't need to compete like them. She didn't have their strength, but she had something else: a sharp mind and a calm heart. When it was her turn, the other competitors looked at her with skepticism. Some of them laughed, unsure of what to make of the princess who had no business being in the arena. But Arya didn't let their mockery affect her. She stepped forward, her mind focused on the task at hand. The challenge was simple: a test of strategy and endurance. Arya was to lead a group of soldiers through a maze of obstacles, using her wits to guide them safely to the finish line. The other competitors relied on their strength to charge through the obstacles, but Arya knew better. She understood that true strength wasn't about brute force. It was about thinking ahead, planning every move carefully. As she led the group, she could see the confusion on the faces of the other competitors. They didn't understand why she wasn't charging through the obstacles like they were. But Arya knew that rushing would only lead to mistakes. She took her time, guiding her team through the maze with precision and careful thought. With each obstacle they overcame, she felt a sense of pride growing within her. She wasn't just following the rules. She was redefining them. When they finally reached the end of the maze, Arya's team had completed the challenge without any injuries or mistakes. The crowd was silent for a moment, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Arya had done it. She had proven that leadership wasn't about physical strength. It was about intelligence, patience, and the ability to see the bigger picture. But her success didn't come without consequences. The Council of Elders watched her closely, their eyes filled with disbelief. They hadn't expected her to succeed, and they certainly hadn't expected her to do it without violence. To them, Arya's victory was a challenge to everything they believed about leadership. It wasn't what they wanted to see. They wanted power. They wanted someone who could crush their enemies with force. But Arya had shown them something different. Nathan was waiting for her at the edge of the arena, his smile wide with pride. "I knew you could do it," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Arya smiled back, feeling a sense of accomplishment she had never known before. "Thank you," she said softly, "but this is just the beginning." As the crowd began to murmur, Arya stood tall, her heart filled with a new sense of purpose. She had done what no one thought was possible. She had shown the world that leadership came from within, not from the strength of the body, but from the strength of the mind and the heart. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The days following the competition were filled with mixed emotions. Arya had proven herself to be more than just a princess with a disability. She had shown that leadership wasn't about physical strength, but about intelligence, patience, and the ability to guide others. Her success in the arena had made many in the kingdom look at her differently. For the first time, Arya felt like she could truly lead, like she could make a difference. But not everyone saw it that way. Of elders, who had always ruled the planet with an iron fist, were not pleased with Arya's performance. They had hoped the competition would confirm their belief that strength was the only true measure of leadership. But Arya's victory had proven them wrong. It had exposed a crack in their long-held beliefs. And they didn't like it. Arya could feel the tension in the palace. The leaders whispered behind closed doors, their voices filled with anger and frustration. They didn't understand her success. They couldn't see past her disability. To them, Arya was still the weak, fragile princess who didn't fit the mold of a true leader. One evening, Arya was summoned to the royal chambers. Her heart sank as she walked through the palace halls, knowing that the council would have something to say about her recent victory. As she entered the chamber, she saw her parents, the king and queen, seated on their thrones. The mood was somber, and Arya could feel the weight of their gazes. "Arya," the king said, his voice cold and distant, "you have done something remarkable, but you must understand, you have also broken the rules." Arya felt a lump form in her throat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. The queen spoke next, her tone soft but firm. "We cannot ignore what has happened, Arya. You have defied tradition. You have shown that leadership is not about strength, but about something deeper. Something that challenges the very foundation of our world." Arya's heart raced. She had never imagined that her success would lead to such rejection. She had thought that the people would see her for who she truly was, not just the princess they expected her to be. The king stood up, his eyes filled with disappointment. "You may have succeeded in the competition, but your actions have caused a rift in the kingdom. The people will never accept a leader who is not physically capable. They will never follow someone they see as weak." Arya felt the sting of his words, but she didn't back down. "I don't believe strength should be measured by physical ability," she said, her voice steady. "I believe leadership is about understanding, wisdom, and compassion. It's about being there for your people, not just defeating them." The king's expression hardened. You are a princess, Arya. You were born to lead with strength. Your disability makes you a symbol of weakness. If you continue down this path, you will only bring shame to the royal family. The words hit Arya like a slap to the face. She had spent her entire life trying to prove that she was more than her disability. She had worked so hard to show her worth, to prove that she could lead. But now, the very people who were supposed to support her were telling her that she wasn't enough. I don't care what the people think, Arya said, her voice rising. I don't care about their expectations. I care about making a difference, about leading with my heart, not my fists. The king's eyes narrowed. You are being naive. The kingdom will never accept a weak ruler. They need someone who can protect them, someone who can fight. Arya felt a surge of frustration. I'm not weak, she said, her voice trembling. With emotion, I have the strength to lead, even if it's not the kind of strength you want. The queen's voice broke through the tension. Arya, she said softly, we want what's best for you. But you must understand, there are consequences to your actions. You have challenged the very foundation of this world. The council has made their decision. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Arya's heart sank. She knew what they meant. The council had already decided that she was unfit to lead. It had chosen one of her brothers to take the throne instead. Your brother will be crowned as the future king, the king said, his voice final. You will be sidelined, Arya. Your place in the royal family will be a symbol of what could have been, but never was. Arya felt a wave of grief wash over her. She had worked so hard to prove herself, to show her worth, and now everything she had hoped for was slipping through her fingers. She had tried to fight for her place, but in the end, the weight of tradition and expectations had crushed her. I understand, Arya said, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned to leave, her heart heavy with the weight of the rejection. As she walked out of the chamber, she felt like a part of her had died. The world she had fought so hard to change had rejected her. She was nothing more than a shadow of the leader she had hoped to become. Outside, the night air was cool against her skin. Arya walked through the palace gardens, her mind racing. She had spent so long trying to meet the expectations of others, trying to prove that she could be a leader. But now it felt like all of her efforts had been for nothing. It was then that she saw Nathan standing by the fountain, waiting for her. He had been there every time she needed him, a constant presence in her life. He had seen her for who she was, not for her disability or her title. And in that moment, Arya knew she didn't have to prove herself to anyone except herself. Nathan walked up to her, his eyes full of concern. Arya, what happened? They've rejected me, she said, her voice breaking. They've decided I'm not fit to rule. I've lost everything. Nathan placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch gentle but firm. You haven't lost anything, Arya. You haven't lost who you are. Arya shook her head, tears filling her eyes. I thought I could make a difference. I thought I could prove them wrong, but I was wrong. Nathan's gaze softened. You haven't lost your chance. This is just the beginning. You don't need their approval to be a leader. You've already proven that. Arya looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. Nathan was the only one who had ever seen her for who she truly was. And in that moment, she realized that her journey wasn't over. She might have been rejected by her family and her people, but she had one person who believed in her. And that was enough to keep going. I'll never stop fighting, Arya whispered, more to herself than to Nathan. I'll find my own way. Nathan smiled, his hand still resting on her shoulder. I'll be with you every step of the way. With that, Arya knew that despite the rejection, despite the pain, she wasn't alone. Still a chance to change the world. The days that followed Arya's rejection were filled with a heavy silence in the palace. The weight of the decision made by the Council of Elders hung over her like a storm cloud. Her world, once full of possibility, now seemed narrow and unyielding. Yet, despite the crushing weight of their words, Arya could not bring herself to give up. She would not let their decision define her. The whispers from the council echoed in her mind. A ruler must be strong. A ruler must lead with power. They had rejected her not because she lacked wisdom or heart, but because she didn't fit their narrow definition of what a leader should be. Arya knew she had the qualities to lead her people she had shown them in the competition. Refused to see it, as the days passed, something inside Arya began to stir. A deep desire to change things, to challenge the beliefs that had kept her imprisoned in her own palace. She no longer felt like the weak princess they had tried to mold her into. She was more than that. Arya knew that if she wanted to create the future she believed in, she would have to fight. She had already lost the support of the council, but she still had the hearts of the common people, those who saw beyond her disability and understood the true meaning of leadership. They were the ones who would help her change the world. One night, as she sat by the fountain in the royal garden, deep in thought, Nathan approached her. His presence was a comfort, a reminder that she was not alone in this fight. "You look troubled," he said, sitting beside her. "I am," Arya admitted. "The council has made their decision, and it feels like there's no way out. They've chosen my brother to lead, and they've rejected me. I don't know where to go from here." Nathan's eyes softened with understanding. "You've already proven who you are, Arya. They may have rejected you, but that doesn't mean the world has to. There are others who see your value, who understand what you can do. You don't need their approval." Arya looked down at her hands, a quiet determination growing inside her. "I know. I just don't know how to change things. The council has so much power. How can I fight them when they control everything?" Nathan reached out and gently placed his hand on hers. "You don't have to fight them alone. There are others who want to see change, who are tired of the old ways. The people you lead will follow you, just as they followed you in the competition. You can inspire them. You can be the leader they've been waiting for." Arya felt a spark of hope inside her. She had never thought of it that way before. She had always been focused on gaining the approval of the leaders. But maybe it was time to focus on the people who truly needed change. Nathan smiled, seeing the shift in her expression. "You don't need to take on the council alone. Together, we can make a difference." Over the next few days, Arya began to gather those who shared her vision for a better future. She spoke with the workers in the palace, the traders in the markets, and the teachers in the schools. To her surprise, many of them shared her frustrations with the council. They were tired of the same old rules and expectations. They wanted change, and they saw Arya as the one who could bring it. One evening, Arya stood before a small group of people in a secret meeting room within the palace. They had come together, united by their desire for a new way of life. Arya looked around the room, feeling a sense of purpose she had never felt before. These were the people who believed in her, who saw her potential as a leader. "We have been living under the council's rules for far too long," Arya began, her voice steady but full of emotion. "They have told us that strength is the only measure of leadership, that physical power is the only way to lead. But that's not true. I know we are capable of so much more. We can lead with compassion, with wisdom, and with unity. It's time for us to take a stand." The room was silent for a moment, and then, one by one, the people nodded in agreement. They were ready for change. They were ready to follow Arya. "We will stand with you, Princess," one of the women said, her voice firm. "We will stand with you and fight for what's right." Arya felt her heart swell with pride. For the first time in her life, she knew that she wasn't alone. The people who had once seen her as weak were now looking to her for strength. She would not disappoint them. The plan began to take shape. They would rally the people, spread the message of unity and change, and take back control from the council. It wouldn't be easy. The council had their own supporters, and they wouldn't give up their power without a fight. But Arya knew that if they stood together, they could create a new future, one where strength was measured by kindness, intelligence, and the ability to inspire others. As the days turned into weeks, the movement began to grow. People from all walks of life joined Arya's cause. The streets were filled with whispers of rebellion, and the palace walls seemed to echo with the cries for change. Arya had become a symbol of hope, not just for those who believed in her, but for everyone who longed for a new way of life. But as the movement gained strength, so did the opposition. The council, furious that their power was being threatened, began to crack down on the protesters. The streets became tense, with soldiers patrolling the city, looking for anyone who dared to stand against them. One day, as Arya was walking through the palace corridors, she was stopped by her mother, the queen. The queen's face was pale, and her eyes were filled with worry. "Arya, you have to stop this," the queen pleaded. "You're putting everyone in danger. The council won't hesitate to use force to stop you." Arya stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "I can't stop now, mother. The people are counting on me. I can't let fear control our future." Queen's expression softened, but her worry remained. "You're so much like your father. He never backed down either. This is different. You're going up against the most powerful people on this planet." Arya placed a hand on her mother's arm. "I know it's dangerous, but I can't live in a world where the people have no voice. This is our chance to change everything." The queen looked at her daughter, her heart filled with both pride and fear. "I can't stop you, can I?" Arya shook her head. "Oh, no. You can't. But I promise you, I won't let the people down." And with that, Arya knew there was no turning back. She was on the path to something bigger than herself, movement that would change the very heart of her world.